order?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Why don't we begin with the Pledge of Allegiance?
How about the invocation?
Invocation?
Yeah, we'll do the invocation. We don't have it on the agenda. That's right.
Oh, it's there. Invocation.
There.
Oh, invocation slap.
Almighty God,
Wait,
Almighty God,
invocation.
you are our creator
Okay.
and our sustainer. You are our light and our fortress. You are our wisdom and our strength. We ask you for your guiding hand to lead us through this meeting. May we approach our tasks with wisdom, and may we approach our members with respect. May our conduct create an environment of cooperation and kindness. Thank you for your help helping us to accomplish this for our day. We ask these things in your powerful name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I like that convocation. I think they should read it at the White House every day. May we be civil and kind and...
Well, pretty soon we won't have a White House because everyone's retired.
Yeah, that could be true.
Can't come fast enough for me.
Daycare center.
Yeah,
Yeah.
adult care.
All right. Roll call. You are on. It is your job.
Thank you. Catherine D'Angelo.
Here.
Sid Blackwelder.
Here?
Daryl Ickoff. Vicki Espy. James. Lily Jean Johnson.
Here.
Marvin King. Joseph Lazara.
Here.
Rob Sheehan.
Here.
Bernard Silverman.
Here.
Ivory Wilson.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we do have a quorum.
Okay. I do not see any visitors, although we missed you at the show, at the Finance Committee meeting, our loss. I think that was the first meeting I've been to that you haven't been at last week, the first one in a long time, so glad you're back. Approval of minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
Any edits, suggestions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Okay, service, staff report. Ms.
So, we skipped employee recognition.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Employee recognition?
We have, we had two, and we got a third here just a minute ago. So I just wanted to let everybody know some of the things that Coast RTA has been involved in and we've been recognized for. Obviously, this is the Whitmore Community Magazine Hour of Power LLC. They sponsor high school students predominantly in summer jobs, and we sponsored a student this year, and so we got appreciation for that.
Very good.
What did the student do that we sponsored?
I don't know that we know. We just
We
Yeah,
just
they,
we provided
contributed
support.
enough
They
money
work-
for one.
They work in the community, they do different work, they have them working in offices and,
Oh, okay.
you know, just keep them out of trouble in the summertime, and give them a job.
Is that from the Whitmore Alumni Association?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
One with LaRue, Dalloway, and that group?
Mhm.
I was remembering back, I think when I was 15, I was running a park in the summer. I was like the person who got out all the things for the kids to play with and stuff like that. It was a good summer job. Yeah.
We've talked to them about possibly hosting one of those folks for a job.
Yeah, that would be good, you know,
We did that all in New England, huh?
get them interested in the machinery back there.
Something.
Mhm.
Yeah. So we'll work on that. For the second year, we provided a parking shuttle for the downtown, the Crossroads Myrtle Beach Jazz Festival. And we were in appreciation for providing that service.
Very good.
So we'll put these up in the, put these up out here.
I rode our shuttle from Pelican Stadium
Did
to
ya?
the event, yes I did.
Yeah,
Very nice.
heard that it worked out pretty well.
It did. There was a lot of discussion at that at the ATA tax meeting when Mickey presented for his group, and there was a lot of acknowledgement that that RTA had provided that transportation, and there was a lot of discussion that at least where it was located this summer, that it needed to be provided. You know, there wasn't sufficient parking by any stretch where they landed. So.
One time, the driver, blank on his name, did not know who I was, did not know was a board member. Pleasant, there was another writer from down there temporarily on business from the Columbia area. This guy was the most positive guy I could think. Really, it was wonderful, especially not knowing who the heck I was.
Right.
Good, very nice.
Most of the drivers don't know, when I stop the bus, you know, when it stops, and I get out of the car and go up and introduce myself, they still don't know, they look at me like, you know.
Who's this beautiful lady who's?
Yeah, oh yeah, like, you know, like I'm off my rocker or something, but maybe it'd be a good idea one of these days to get us all together so they know who we are.
I don't know, we did.
Well,
Or you don't-
how about November 15th? We have a turkey lunch
Oh,
for
yeah.
Thanksgiving
Oh, yeah.
planned here in this very room.
Right,
12 till
yeah, we always did that.
till we stop, so you're welcome to come to that.
What time of day is it, November 15th?
I think it's a Wednesday.
Yeah, we've done that
November
as
15th.
the board came.
What is it gonna be?
It's we're just having a turkey
Thanksgiving
dinner here,
dinner.
Thanksgiving celebration for all our employees.
Okay.
Everybody
in
bring
here.
something?
Yep, so we're doing a little potluck
Okay.
type of thing. So there would be an opportunity for you all to come and chat with drivers, and I would encourage you to do so.
Mr. Silverman used
So-
to make cookies that look like buses at that, I remember.
He does that
No,
at
that was
Christmas.
Christmas, yeah.
At
And
Christmas.
that's really great, it's not me.
Oh, well, great, well, then you should do it in
They still,
November.
they still do
That
that
would
in December.
I don't know, I'll ask her.
What time is that gonna be,
12 noon, high noon,
12 noon.
right here.
And the food will be here until the last driver is here and served, so.
I don't have the award with me, I'm not sure where it is, but, Mr. Silverman was kind enough, to, go and accept it over this past weekend as part of the county cleanup, or Keep Horry County Clean
Oh, yeah.
organization awarded us a community service award for our assistance in the county cleanup.
Yeah, it was a nice little ceremony. It was, you know, outside, it was a lot of fun. Bo Ives, I think you might remember
Oh,
him.
yeah.
He was the MC there and did a good job.
Oh, he always
And
does.
John Glover and I accepted the award.
Oh, that was
And
nice.
Very good.
it was very nice.
It was
Yeah.
in the paper as well.
Oh, was it really? I didn't
Yes,
see
it
it.
was.
And I sent out the press release that I got from Horry County. I sent it to all
Yeah,
board
North Myrtle
members.
Beach had the same weekend, we had shredding and different things, which I asked them to do a few years ago, and they put that into the system, which is really good, now they do it. So when we have our buses up there, you can be involved in that.
Yeah.
Well, and we did 4 different locations, and I think one of them was North Myrtle Beach.
Oh, you
No,
did?
not this year?
I don't
We did
think
Loris
so.
and Bucksport and Aner and Myrtle Beach.
Oh, okay,
You
sorry.
did it?
We've done them in the past.
Each over only had one person signed up, so that's why we opted to go over to Loris and Bucksport.
Oh. Well, you have to talk to Greg Barnhill on that, he runs that.
Talk to Tracy Edge.
So that's it for
No, I don't
employee
think so.
recognition.
I don't wanna, I'm not
Sorry.
going
To
to
go
say
to prison to see Tracy.
Service PAC report, Ms. Lily Jean.
Where are we?
Service.
We didn't have a meeting,
Yeah.
did we?
No,
We did not.
we didn't have.
No,
that.
we did not.
Nope, there was no meeting, so there's nothing to report. But we've been servicing quite a lot.
Well, we do have a lot planned for the November 8th, I think it is, meeting. When is
We
service
have
back
one
in
in
November?
November 8th?
November 8th, yeah.
And we did
Service
take the
back.
shuttle this weekend, the bog off. Just a quick update.
Yes, along with county cleanup, we also provided a parking shuttle for Loris.
How
For
about,
Bog off.
excuse me, how about yesterday's meetings at the Chapin Library for the 15 North change?
I will address them in my manager's report, if you don't
No, I don't mind.
mind.
How about AECom? Have we heard anything from them about anything?
Not yet,
But they're out there.
but they are on tap for
Good.
being here on the 8th to
Oh, really?
give you an update, or at least give me an update so I can give you an update.
Who is that?
ADCOM,
The-
bus
oh, yeah, yeah.
stuff, that will be on that agenda for sure, and then we have some service stats to look at, comparison, that sort of thing,
Okay, good.
for that meeting.
A little quick for AECom to have much to report, so that's great that they're coming around.
All right, let's go with finance then.
All right, well, first apologize for not being there in person, but our finance meeting went pretty smoothly, I think. We were at the end of the year, so we basically just looked at all of our financials in line. Well, with the exception of, our maintenance, which we recognize has been a challenge for the year. So we kind of looked at that, but again, as we consider things like salary, those sort of washed out for us. So as we saw the overall numbers, they were pretty much level, so we're right on target as far as budget. We also considered, or I think our main issue popped up as our cash. And just looking at, keeping a close eye on where we're at liquidity-wise, making sure that we have enough cash to do what we need to do. So using our CMB line was one of the things we talked about a lot, and considering having to go there, go back frequently. So that's one of the things and one of the challenges I think Brian agreed to kind of look at and see if we can kind of figure out where we could either increase some types of revenues or try to decrease some of our expenses. And I think we came up with the fact that it needs to be a little bit of both, and really kind of figuring out how we manage that and try to get to a cash position where we're more comfortable. From there, and lots of questions there. I think from there we went to sort of an ATAX discussion and just kind of figured out, again, where the revenues potentially would come from, or where expenses would need to be cut. But as far as financials,
let me just add a couple of things. One, the total maintenance budget over, what is it, on page 2 of the report, 128,000. There's really two primary components of that overage. 2 engine replacements that were done, one in July and one in September. And then there's a pretty healthy reduction in inventory for the end of the year inventory that we did. So that, you have $10,000 or $15,000 coming out of inventory, that goes into expense. Because you have to essentially expense those items. But bottom line, being $58,000 over budget for the year, I believe that that's really covered by these two engine replacements, because those are funded under capital.
And the county's gonna
And we're getting reimbursed from the county for the local match, and we have the federal dollars in the budget for the capital expenditure. So it's really this issue of a crossover between our operating expenses and what our capital expenditures. And those operating expense budgets do not necessarily include all of the dollars, all of the revenue from the capital side for those expenses. So that's why we're showing the overage. Is that clear as mud, Bernie?
I believe you.
Well, stated in another way, it meant we're 1.1% off the budget.
Yeah, no,
It's not, it's still noise in the overall scheme of things,
I think it's a good number. It's reasonable.
so.
How many budget revisions did we do in the last fiscal year?
Yeah, maybe, 3 maybe? Yeah,
2 or 3,
significally less than last year, so.
including the one at the end of the year.
Yeah, the 29th. No, I think they're, 3 of them from all these things.
So if you'll allow me, Marvin, I'll talk about ATAX here.
yeah, please do. That's a good one.
It's been pretty hectic here. I've been running around between my son's field trip to Thompson's Farm yesterday, and I had meetings in Georgetown on Monday. I made the mistake of looking at my email from Michael Price at the city on the next ATAX meeting time and location, and it was today at 9:30. So I spent most of last night and this morning composing a letter that I've distributed to you. I had Erica deliver it this morning in person and say, sorry, we have this conflict, I have a board meeting today, so I can't be there. But really making 4 primary points to the Accommodations Tax Committee, that our Our project is a prescribed project for those dollars. There's eight types of projects that are prescribed for that funding. Number 5 of which is the tourist transportation shuttle. They asked me while I was there last time to give site examples around the country of other types of tourist shuttles that are in place in downtowns. Charleston has the Dash service, which is a fare-free service that's funded through their dedicated sales tax as well as ATAX funding for transit. They run 3 vehicles, not unlike the ones that we run. And then Savannah has, not only do they have a river taxi and a rubber tired trolley that goes around downtown, they also have a steel wheel trolley that runs along River Street. And all 3 of those operations are fare free. And it's funded through a series of different taxes and levies in this district in the downtown area, mostly related to tourism, the convention center and things like that. So I gave them the websites to those particular operations and certainly wish I'd had those in my back pocket the first time around. The
Did
third,
Erica make this presentation? Did she
No.
read this? You just handed it?
I just asked her to hand it to Michael and say, please distribute this on our behalf.
Okay.
I told them that we'd be willing to certainly coordinate with the hospitality industry if there are some refinements or some things, changes that we can make to the system or to the routing to make it more convenient or convenient for more people. I strongly believe that going further south on Ocean Boulevard makes a lot of sense. We could do that without increasing operating costs by doing sort of a staggered routing where one vehicle goes down that far and the other vehicle might do something else on the other end of the loop. And that we would continue to pursue additional funding from the resorts and entertainment venues directly. So those are really the 4 main points that I wanted to make if I was there in person. And hopefully, they'll continue. We will have another audience, this time with City Council before final decisions are made. And I will make sure that I know when that is and be there with my tie on and ready to roll, so.
That's right.
But hopefully, this, I'm hoping that we get a little bit of money out of them.
City council, do you have a guesstimated date on the city council? Oh, November?
Michael told me that he wasn't exactly sure. He said in years past it's been like their January meeting.
Okay. The next one's November 3rd, I think John Peterson's contract expires. So I think, okay.
Yeah, I think we have a little bit of time, but I will stay on top of it. I knew that the meeting was coming up. I didn't realize that it was conflicting with this meeting.
I don't want to blindside you with this question, but I'm just curious, is that going to be a fee-for-service type of thing, or is that more of a program support type of thing where we get a flat program support subsidy, if you will?
It's a grant, so it'll
Okay, I
come to us.
mean, even that being said, I'm
It's not a
just,
reimbursement.
okay, good. Because a lot of our money, a lot of our problems, and getting back to page 2 on here, is most of the money we take in, even the local match money, is pure pass-through. It's all cost reimbursement. And I think that's what contributes to this cash issue, why we're always short of cash, is every dollar we bring in is just basically billed out, or the local subsidies are used as match for what we bill out for the federal grants and stuff. So nothing much sticks to us. And I mean, this would be great if it was just pure subsidy per se, and I think that's part of the issue. That's why I was curious if it was.
Well, and it would come in similar to other local funding.
Yeah.
So we
I mean,
might be
if we had to
payment-based, but
If we have to quantify it, it's just gonna be redundant with other funding sources, so that's why I asked the question, because it won't help alleviate the cash situation unless it is just a program support,
Right.
subsidy type of.
Most of the people who were at the table here were at the discussion of this last week in the Finance Committee meeting. For those of you who were not, I'll simply say it didn't go well with the ATAX community committee. So these are community members. I think Brian can and will be eloquent with City Council. And City Council may have much more of an interest in this, considering they're more likely to see this as a service. The consensus of people at the ATAX Community Committee was that if we're gonna run a service like this, we should charge for it. And that unless we start charging for it, it's not gonna be, it's not something that they were terribly interested in. They were not terribly impressed with the argument that we can run more efficiently by not charging. They seem to be of the opinion that the only thing of any value in this world are things you pay for. And they didn't see any particular benefit. One of the points Brian made in the comment to them was that a fair number of the people who ride the shuttle have good income, and they spend that good income as a consequence of being on and around the entertainment shuttle. Well, that was turned around by one of the committee members to say, well, if they have good income, they should pay for it.
Yeah, why wouldn't they be willing to pay a fare?
Why wouldn't they be willing to pay a fare? And Brian's point was not that they are unwilling to pay a fare, it was that charging them would slow the system down and would make, it would make visiting Myrtle Beach to just simply be, one more thing that you have to be shelling money out for.
Well, and that it would not cover the cost of the operation.
Right.
I tried to make that point. And it was really frustrating because the person right before me was trying to fund fireworks displays. And I'm like, you're not gonna charge people for fireworks displays again, right? I mean.
They fund all kinds of things. They
But,
just fund something we read. Didn't they just fund the jazz festival?
They funded a piece of the jazz festival on the argument that it could grow bigger with their money and bring more people. And to their credit, the majority of the items that were presented were a cost share component where kids playing softball, kids playing baseball, families coming to soccer, that their money would be multiplied many times over by what people were spending. That was the majority. The fireworks was the exception, but they didn't balk at the fireworks at all. They just thought they were very pleasant to it. Their manner, I honestly think that if Brian had brought this letter and used this line of argument, it wouldn't have made any difference because I think their minds were made up. The reason I think that is because I was there to be there in case the plane crashed or got late. Thank goodness it didn't. And so Brian managed to get in. Also, we moved Brian's presentation toward the end of the 36 or so different presentations. And so when I went up to make those arrangements, they made it very clear that they had questions for Brian.
They were ready for me.
They had guns and loaded, and they didn't want to waste their bullets on little old me, is the way I interpreted it.
Their opinion hasn't changed from years ago.
Well,
That was the same opinion.
but it may be the city council.
That I remember from years ago, because we tried
Yeah,
many years ago.
maybe the city council will have a different view of it.
And they make the final decision.
Yes.
The city council makes the final decision. One of the things we've asked for in Brian's either manager's report or in the finance report is to let this group know, the board know, what the timeline is for us to pull the plug on this, if in fact that is what we are going to do. When would it be appropriate and when would we have used all due diligence? Because we've made it pretty clear that absent some funding from somewhere, that this board is not supportive of running this free the way we have. But Brian has a good timeline in mind, which we also discussed at the finance committee meeting. If you want to.
Sure. I mean, we're really, a final decision is probably in the March timeframe.
Right.
So we'll have had our audience
Around St.
with
Patrick's Day. Right.
Earlier for printing purposes.
Oh, earlier.
early March. How's that?
Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's gonna be the timing. So, we've
Well, it's gonna
we've
be
gotta
their
run a few
loss.
things past county council, and.
We've asked Sid to talk to Johnny. Have you got a chance to call Johnny? No.
Brian and I have lunch with him Friday.
Okay, all right, so we've asked Sid to talk to Johnny and Brian to talk to Mark. We discussed the possibility of talking to other members of county council and decided that maybe that we don't need to go there. We'll just get a read from them. How important to county council is it that we provide this service? It is at variance to the other types of service that we provide, all of which are fare-based. And we don't want to cut our nose to spite our face, but at the same point, we also, if we're going to put in a more ambitious ask to county council, it should not be for this.
Yeah, right.
It should be for
This should
something
be-
that is
this
more
should
stable
be
source.
For
Yeah.
Myrtle Beach.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a main point in the original letter to them, our cover letter on the application, was that, you know, from a revenue perspective, these dollars are really slated for supporting services and events for tourists. And, you know, all of our other funding sources, which have remained static or have decreased over the past 6 years, are really on the backs of residents. And so it makes, you know, there's a good nexus between this funding source and this, you know, providing this service. So that fell on deaf ears.
They seem really fascinated by the concept of leveraging these fares.
Yeah.
I'm not abandoning that concept because it seems like, okay, if we capitulate to that, the downside is the service is a little slower, but if we can leverage the fare, or leverage these fares and get a chunk of change, maybe it's worth it. I don't know. I'm not an operational guy, but economically it makes sense. I'm just looking at those dollars.
If you go from 0 to whatever number, 50 cents, $1, whatever that is, the number of people using the service will go down.
Yeah, shoot, right.
And so, you know, and even at that funding, even at that fare level, if we got 20% out of the fare box of the cost, we'd be doing well in transit terms.
Better than you think of.
So
We're still $150,000 short.
we're still $150,000 short to operate the service.
Well,
So,
it's
and
up
that,
to them to decide whether or not they want the service.
and we may be looking at a point where we won't run it, and we'll see what happens.
Obviously, they feel they can sell it to the community better if you throw a fare on there, which you know makes little sense, but if you get to where you
Gordon,
want
can
to go. I
you
don't
mute
know.
your phone on your side? I'm not sure what's barking, but something's making a lot of noise.
You know,
It could be a child.
at my old age, I may forget the March, because I'll be 71 in April, but
Oh, my
say March
Lord.
comes here, we have to
Why
make
are
a
you,
decision.
you're so old.
To pull the plug. At that time, if that's what our decision is, I mean, every potential resort area who benefits from this needs to get a letter saying, we regretfully have to pull the plug because we don't. Let them then put pressure
That's right,
on
that's
the other.
right.
Let them know why we're doing that, because we want to, because we have to. And let them go back and squawk to these
Right.
people here.
Well, and the
we
reason
do
why
that-
we have the March timeframe, depending, you know, regardless of what happens with the ATAX folks, we still have the avenue of going to individual, you know, resort / entertainment folks and
I wish you
seeing
go
if,
to all of them
seeing if
now.
we can, well, I mean, that strategy has happened in the past and we haven't done very well. But we have new people involved. I mean, even Mr. Lazarus himself said that he would contribute for his businesses. And he would go to bat to the Boroughs of Chapin's of the world and others for us, so.
Well, that's all we have to say,
Right.
that's all we need for advertisement, to show that people are contributing.
Right.
How about the chamber? We talked about them
Oh,
back
believe
and
me.
forth. I mean, I know
Well, the
that-
chamber gets 30% of these dollars, but they are limited to, I guess, their staff expenses and advertising outside of the region.
But they get other money. I mean, I'm not talking about, I'm not talking about the chamber,
ATAX dollars.
ATAX money, just the chamber budget.
Well-
But the,
Yeah,
one
money.
thing we're dealing with this year that may make all of this discussion moot when Brian does go to the city is that the city has greatly increased their request for public safety to come from that funding source on a magnitude of
$7 million.
$7 million. That, you know, was much, much below that. So honestly, this may be a moot point. One thing I'd like to do is go back to Daryl's point. If a letter is gonna go, I don't think the first letter that those people should hear is, we regret we are not providing the service. I think there should be a January 1 letter
Help us
that says,
provide us.
at this present time, in due diligence, we must in fact engage in proper planning. We do not see a funding source that will permit us to do this.
Right.
And we will give you a final decision on this March 1, but I do think, Brian, that we would be remiss if we didn't send something
Well,
out.
yeah, Friday need to do it sooner than that, and I think we need to say, look, we've submitted an application for ATAX. You know, we're thinking that if we get anything out of that process, it certainly won't cover the cost of the service. You know, can you help?
Yeah, we should do it before the end of the year, because other people are gonna be asking them for things before the end of the year. Because I know
Right.
in soliciting for monies and
Well,
different things, by January, forget it. They said they already have decided who they're going to give all the.
Well, and, you know, in that letter, we could say, look, there's a number of things that you can do to help us. One, contact city council and let them know that you support this project. B, you know, are you able to help support the project financially? C, something else, I
Well,
haven't
you
come up
think
with C yet.
You see what they're gonna do, they're gonna take the easiest way out.
Well, we give them that, but if we get some voices in
Right.
the ears of councilmen,
Well, could you
Sure.
send that letter? I don't think you need to wait for our December 6th board meeting. I
No.
think you just need to.
yeah, I'll just.
Get it out.
Michelle and I'll put something together.
When we,
Michelle, are you okay with that? I know you're a little antsy about the timeline of all of this as well. You and I share, you're quiet, I'm noisy, but we share an impatience about timing of these things.
But even beyond the businesses who will be impacted, local folks will also, even though we think of the funds of bringing in
Right.
tourists, but locals will be impacted by as well because they take advantage of it.
Point C should be locals, including some of the people who work in those areas. We did see evidence that a third or a quarter of the people that were riding this were employees.
So that is a good third point. You know, it's like, look, these are your employees that are also using the service to get around. Because that was the point that hit hardest with Mr. Lazarus, was, you know, he's got folks, you know, who are getting there for work and that sort of thing. But, so,
Myrtle Beach may have a new mayor by next January.
Oh, yeah.
possibly.
Guess who?
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
Could be anybody, yeah.
Wouldn't
I
that
don't
be
know,
something?
Myrtle Beach is missing out on lots of money by not charging their tour buses for parking. And millions of dollars they collect out of that. And,
Tour buses for what?
for parking.
Oh, yeah.
You've
Every
been telling-
city you go
You've
to,
been
tour
telling us
buses
that
have
for
to pay
15
to
years,
park.
right?
But the reason why they don't wanna do that, they said if Myrtle Beach charges for parking, they're gonna go to North Myrtle Beach.
Well, they're gonna charge, there's no place to park in North Myrtle Beach, unless you wanna park on top of a hotel.
But that's millions of dollars, and some of that money could come to transportation.
So can you make a note to remind Brian, to remind Michelle? Draft this. Get it out.
So any other questions on ATAX?
I think the big thing is that we show that we made different attempts. Started with this letter and then by March, we'd say, well, in conclusion,
Yeah.
no funding became available or funding became available because of it.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, we are back to finance. If there's,
I think that was the bulk of our discussion at finance meeting. We did have a couple other things we talked about, but I think those were the major items, unless there's something else that committee members that we need to discuss here.
Yeah, I did do some comparisons between FY16 and 17, but we can roll that into the manager's report if you'd like,
Okay.
which is next.
I've got one comment on finance. Are we underway, or have we had plans to get underway for the budget asks for next year's municipal budgets, county budgets? We talked about fourth quarter, you know, that we need to be ready earlier than last year.
Well, I'm gonna talk a little bit about where I'm headed with the county, on some things and some ideas for what I'm gonna present. And I think a lot of those presentations will roll over to some of these other folks. Like we don't have anything scheduled with Conway, but we need to get down there and talk with, I think my first discussion will be with Adam, the county, or the city administrator.
Interim.
No, he's permanent now.
Oh, yes.
And they've hired a new planning director as well.
Unless you wanna go with
To
you.
wait till after the election.
That's probably if you do.
Yeah, maybe.
The elections.
I think, I wanna talk to him about the process more than anything else and getting in, you know, when do I need to get involved in that discussion? Because we were obviously late last time around. I'm not sure there's several councilmen who are up for re-election at this point. So we've got that issue and that may delay the budget discussion, may not, I don't know. And then we need to, you know, get to Loris. We have had a few interactions with Georgetown. We went to the State of the County and Cities meeting the other day, and I was able to chat with a number of the councilmen. And so I didn't get to talk to Miss Lily Jean directly, but I gave her a hug, and she kind of knows what's going on in here. So we have that. We did have a discussion with the city administrator for City of Georgetown, and that was a pretty positive discussion for the most part, although we didn't really discuss directly, you know, how to get into their budget process. We did talk to them about possibly putting up some dollars to help us, especially as it relates to some of the economic development initiatives going on down there with Brian Tucker with the county and Gloria, what's Gloria's last name? Tinubu. There is effort afoot down there to do another route similar to the old Route 14, but that would be providing service to the industrial park, which has gotten an influx of new employees or new businesses down there.
Where's the industrial park in?
It's on 521,
So-
so kind of due east of Georgetown,
Okay. All right.
between Georgetown and Andrews.
Yeah.
And then there's also a number of areas that are just south of downtown, in the Maryville area, HGTC, Pennyroyal Road, which has a number of apartment complexes and that sort of thing. So they called us, Sel and Brian Tucker called us, and so we've started that discussion. They're interviewing employers about, you know, the possibility of doing this and trying to assemble some funds to do it. And I think
west of Georgetown, wouldn't it be? The ocean.
I meant due west, yes.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to figure out what there is.
I heard him, and I thought.
Put it on a platform.
We're gonna be serving an oil rig.
So who's Brian Tucker?
He's the economic development director for Georgetown County.
You mean for
But we'd had that conversation before we went to talk to the city, and I said, you know, they're talking about it over at the county, maybe we can work out some deal where we can sort of serve both interests. I think from Gloria's perspective, the economic development person for the city, she wants to get people down to Charleston. And, you know, I told her, I was like, look, that's not really a bus operation necessarily. I really feel like that's a van pool operation, and down the road, we can help with that. But in the meantime, I'm gonna put her in touch with the Carta folks,
Yeah, right.
who do van pools.
We did that and it was a bust.
Really, Gene?
Right.
But the focus is for the
Georgetown.
medical people, right, when you did it?
Well, we
back
also
then?
did it
Yeah,
for
veterans
tourists.
and-
We did it for tourists also,
Yeah.
This is to get.
and it was a bust.
Into the VA.
This is for
Yeah,
work, not
that's-
for tourism.
Yeah, she's talking about it for employment, you know, getting people down to the
Boeing
Volvo
and
and
whatnot.
Boeing and MUSC and those places. So, you know, I said, look, that's been tried before, and granted it had flaws, and then a $25 fare. But you know, that's intercity service, that's not commuter service, so.
Plus, we wanna bring people up this way to
Well,
spend their money.
Well, and you know,
Well, we serve Georgetown
we
County.
do that. I mean, that's really what our service is designed to do, and, you know, from Gloria's perspective, those jobs don't pay enough. So it doesn't give her the value that sending people to to Charleston. And Brian's point is, let's have them have jobs here in town, which is a much easier thing to serve with transit, you know, for sure. So, you know, those discussions are ongoing, and you know, I basically told them, you know, what it would cost to put another vehicle down there, and we could do it, how to do whatever we wanted it to do, but, so they are exploring options on that.
How about a van pool, a van or something?
Well, Vanpool, I think Vanpool does have some benefits. I think it could benefit our region too. It's just, there's a capital investment that, it's something that we want to start, you know, slowly and small and build it up. But I think we got to get our funding and our ducks in a row before we go down that path.
Because I know
Really
they
could
wanted,
open up a hot dog stand right now.
they wanted us to go into Pawleys Island or.
We would be going out of our area of coverage.
Yeah, that's okay, as long as, go ahead, Marvin.
I'm gonna have to jump off here, but was there any other questions for me before I leave?
I don't think so.
You'll be travel safely.
All right, thank you. I'll see y'all later. Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good day.
As long as one of the trip ends is in your region,
Yeah.
you can operate.
Just pick-
But it's not
pick
cost
your
effective
receipt.
for us to send anything, you know,
Well, I would
down.
rather see us go to North Myrtle Beach before we go down to
You and me
Charleston.
both. You and me both.
But we would.
So I would fight that.
Did I answer your question? I mean, it's
Well, like
really,
I say, I know that they were looking, when I was involved more with the Pawleys Island, that they wanted to get into the van pool and all that, it'd be more or less residential and.
I think we have a couple of questions floating here, though. I want to finish Bernie's question. At the December 6th meeting, could we get a written outline of your calendar for approaching the funding sources for the next year? Is that still timely?
Anytime after the elections, we can start. You
Okay.
just need to know who your slate's going to be before you go and start.
Yeah. Elections being November 5th or so,
And
3rd?
there's another one on the 13th, so depending on what the community,
Okay.
by mid-November, you should know your slate.
So if
or
we could
December.
just get a calendar. at
yes,
December 6th.
related to funding. I guess the one thing though that I have in the manager's report as well is that there is no transportation committee meeting, Horry County Transportation Committee meeting for November. They just canceled it yesterday, so we need to send out a reminder of that. So I do plan on being on the agenda for the December 6th meeting, or December 4th meeting, it's that same week as the board meeting. And what I want to bring to them is really
Is
two,
that a full board or is that transportation?
Transportation.
Okay.
but two primary graphics, and I got waylaid by this letter to ATAC, so I didn't finish this graphic. But basically, I want to illustrate our financial constraint graphically with a line on this is what our costs are and this is where our revenue has been, and show the divergence, and then show what what the $10 per car would do for us, and then follow that up with essentially a schedule for expansion. What are they going to get for that over how many years?
Suggestion I would make is to ask Mark to make a point to be at the Transportation Committee meeting on that day if you're going to make that presentation, because you're swinging on the breeze when he is not there, but very much in, it needs, and I think it has his support. But the fact that he wasn't there at the last Transportation Committee meeting makes me wonder. I don't know how they scheduled those, but if Mark could make a point of being there, that would help you make your case.
And I have made a foray out to him to meet with him, but I haven't scheduled anything yet with him, so.
And I didn't mean to cut off the discussion about the van pool. I've always thought that's how we did things in Ohio when you were talking about getting into Columbus from Toledo, for example.
You know, we have tried the van pool,
Did you?
since we've been here, and we've had problems.
Mhm.
And the problems we had with the van pool, is the driver.
Yeah.
Couldn't find drivers for it. You know,
Well,
And you didn't go with the
Talking about-
model that one of the person's using?
Well, we tried, someone out of the community
Right,
have the van.
yeah.
And then, but for some reason, we had problems with, people driving the.
It's definitely a different animal.
Yeah.
There are some resources out there. Once we have a good handle on what our financial capacity is gonna be for providing that type of service, there are some resources out there. Now, the bow I was gonna put on the van pool discussion is that, I think the COG has a role in that particular service, at least from the ride matching side of things. And I do have a conversation coming up with Sarah and Mark down there, just to talk about some coordination. We're thinking about trying to coordinate on some outside services, like for GIS and some other things that are limited here and limited there as well. But I'll put Van Pool on that discussion as well, in terms of, you know, what their thoughts are on starting a program and you know, maybe jointly starting something, you know, and all. That has to be employer-based type of transportation. You gotta find an employer that's got 6 or 8 people that kinda live kinda near each other and are coming in at the same time.
And one or more of them is willing to drive.
And one or more of them is willing to drive, so there is some coordination up front that needs to happen on that, so. But that is something that, you know, we would start with 1 or 2 vehicles and then grow it from there. It's start very small and see how it works. So that was it on Van Pool.
And to be honest, that's how I've seen it work as well. It's at the initiation of the employer, not the willingness of the busing service or the transport service.
So you're ready for the rest of the manager's report?
Well, one other thing on the bus yesterday, and I overheard, someone out talking on the radio, on the intercom or whatever they call it. And somebody was looking for information on changing from the number 1 to the Loris bus, connecting here from number 1 to Loris.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty good. That's a good sign.
Yeah.
People are using the system, figuring it out.
We had some issues with the Gen Fairs or Farebox on assigning trips to different routes in September. Like there was one day that there was 277 people on the Bucksport route, so I knew that was kind of out of whack.
You think?
And it's just because they came in here and turned it into a 7, but didn't change their fare box over.
Yeah.
So we had to smooth out the data a little bit, but we were close to between both routes, averaging between 25 and 35 people a day.
Oh, that's good.
That's
So,
Loris and Bucksport?
Loris and
That's
Bucksport,
good.
you know, each, you know, or 15 people per day on each route for 3 trips. That's pretty good. You know, we'll see. We'll let it grow here a little bit and see what happens.
Well, the next time I was on that number 1 twice yesterday, and 1 was full, and 1 was pretty full. I mean, maybe it was full too, I don't know. I was in the front and looked around, but they were both, you know.
And was it one of the longer cutaways, or was it in a full bus?
No, it was a long cutaway.
Long cutaway. Yeah, so those were 22 passenger.
Yeah.
Or are you gonna let Brian do his manager's report?
No. I have more stories.
So,
I'm gonna do it now.
So one of the handouts that just came around is this chart, and I just, we talked about this a little bit at Finance Committee, and I can pull it up if I need to, but I just wanted to make a couple of points, and this is comparing FY 17 to the last 12 months of FY 16, and I'm a little bit hesitant to worry too much about some of the expense numbers, simply because there was 16 is a 15-month year, and it had 2 summers in it. And so there were, you know, there's expenses that, you know, sometimes we spread across the whole year, and sometimes they're lumped into another area. And so I still don't have an apples to apples, true apples to apples comparison, but,
Yeah.
yeah, just tell me that. You know, bottom line is we did about, you know, we're taking basically the summer of 15 out of the mix. So it's basically October 1 of 15 through September 30th of 16 compared to the same dates, 16 to 17. And we did 25,000 more rides, which is good. Our passengers per hour went slightly upticked from 12.3 to 12.5 on the transit system, and from 0.76 to 0.85 on the paratransit system, which you know, that's just improved scheduling on the demand response side of things. Of concern, O&M expense per hour, which is in these efficiency metrics here, about halfway down the page. 8190 for FY16 and 9425 for FY17, and there's really two numbers that are going into that. Our maintenance expense went up considerably in FY17. All of those buses, including the 1998 Gilligs and the 2003 Nabbies that we got from DART, were a year older, and we did replace, I think we replaced 5 engines in that time frame in FY17, 5 or 6. So there's that crossover from the capital side. But the other part of it is the transit center, and that's costing us, you know, an extra $30,000 to $40,000 a year in labor and other things in order to maintain and man that facility, and I think that's money well spent.
It's less than
Money
3,000,
totally
less
well
than
spent.
3,000 a month.
Right. So while it's a source of concern, it's one that I'll keep an eye on, and obviously as we muddle through some of these cash issues and those types of things, looking at cost is something that we will address. On the paratransit side, we went from $48 an hour to $44 an hour, and we transported a lot more people. I think a lot of that has to do with better scheduling of labor. You know, some of it is more service hours and no change really in the administration of that service. You know, we didn't hire any additional schedulers or any of those things. So I guess the only other thing I want to look at is just accidents, breakdowns, and complaints. We went up in the accident category. I'm not sure, you know, what to attribute that to. You know, obviously the vast majority of these accidents are non-preventable. You know, one is hitting a deer on 701. Yeah, so there's just, you know, there's a lot of things out there.
That wasn't with our new bus, was it?
I don't
Please
know,
don't
but
tell me that.
deer's not gonna hurt a bus.
Really?
It doesn't do the damage to a bus that I would to a car necessarily. Breakdowns, 45 in the 12-month period in 16, 46 in 17. So we were right on the money even though the fleet was a year older. And then, you know, verified complaints from 39 down to 28, so that's a good thing. So I think that, you know, looking at these numbers, it gives me a lot of food for thought in terms of, you know, looking at ways to improve. Last one, bottom line, 74% on-time performance to 91% on-time performance. So a lot of that is attributable to having the transit center in Myrtle Beach, but, you know, just doing a better job all around and keeping these vehicles running and you know, preventive maintenance and all that.
Out of the 28 accidents that we've had, can you say how many was?
Accidents or complaints? You mean complaints?
He's looking at the whole
No.
system,
Yeah, how many would be contributed to?
Quarter of them,
What?
20, you know, so what would that be, 7 of them? You know, there's a couple of single vehicle accidents, like we've hit, you know, there's one driver hit a guardrail out here on 501. You know, so there's ones like that that weren't a lot of damage, but they were certainly preventable.
How did you do that?
He was looking at something, he was distracted driving,
Oh.
for all intents and purposes.
Majority of these accidents in the city of Myrtle Beach.
Most of them happen downtown, for sure, yeah.
Well, I can understand that.
And there's just a lot of craziness down there.
Traffic's been terrible this year,
Right.
this summer, and it's no better now.
I showed you the one video of, you know, the person out there on Faro Boulevard, who just, so,
Didn't see the bus.
just didn't see it, so, it's, it really is a mixed bag, but I, you know, if I had to venture a guess, it's a quarter of them were preventable, or we contributed.
What about this last one where bounced off the front of the bus?
That one, that was the one the other
We were
night?
at fault, right?
No,
No, we weren't at fault.
this was someone running the red light at Grissom Parkway and 501, hitting somebody else and then getting spun into us. There was no way our driver could have prevented that one.
Was what kind of a bus?
Oh, that was one of the new ones,
It was.
for sure.
These are
What, how
1504
much
were
damage?
1504
How much damage? They must love that yellow must.
Well,
must be
$2,000 for the
awesome.
bike rack alone,
Oh my,
and it needs a new bumper on it, and,
insurance paying for that?
oh yeah.
But the bus still working, right?
Oh yeah, we've been able to put it back
The
up.
increase is all in big buses. The Air Transit has had no increase in accidents.
Right, right.
Of these 49 accidents, how many are really like windshield wipers and?
49 breakdowns?
Yeah, yeah. Some are lights, some are, the lifts don't work, or the wipers don't work. or
Yeah.
something.
Not
Not all
there's,
of them are, motors broken.
yeah, there's actually a pretty high incidence of, situations where the driver did not follow the procedure for a particular element of the bus. Let me explain. They didn't, when you, well, most of those buses are ramps now, so it's not really, any issues with the ramps necessarily. But they didn't let the bus air up after it kneeled. So they bottomed up, or there was an issue with the air system because they didn't bring it all the way back up before they took off.
Oh,
They didn't
Oh my
follow,
God.
they might have a bus shut down because of, you know, something, for any number of reasons, and they didn't like follow procedures to turn it back on, you know, all the things you need to do with all the buttons you need to push in order to get it started back up.
high tech.
Well, it is and it isn't.
Yeah, but
Those Navi buses, those DART buses, they all have an idiosyncrasy list. So they're all a little bit different. And so it's not, you know, it's, I'm not trying to cast any dispersions on anybody in terms of, you know, how that works. But there's a number of breakdowns that were caused because the bus shut down and they didn't try to start it back up right. There's, you know, wiper issues. I would say a vast majority of those were the Gilligs.
are they getting,
And
are
those
these
are being
drivers
disposed of.
getting training now?
Yes, we're,
Well, I guess when they go from one bus
There are a
to
lot of different
another,
buses
they're
in the
different,
fleet.
right? It's like going from one car to another, you know?
and we have a bus distribution plan now. So the buses are rotated through the system.
Ah,
You know, so you don't get the same bus every day.
that's good.
And the reason for that is environmental justice regs. You can't put a new bus on the same route every day. You've gotta rotate it throughout your system. So because we have a disparate condition of our buses, you know, you've got 4 brand spanking new ones out there and the rest are, you know, considerably older. You have to be able to rotate through the system. You have to illustrate to FTA that you're doing that on a daily basis.
You know, when different municipalities are giving us money, they have no idea the things that we have to go through. They really don't, they really don't.
Yeah.
They think that we just get money from them and we run a bus. They don't know that you can't use the same bus twice in a row and all
Right.
these things. They really don't. They have to be educated. They really
Okay.
do.
When we get a
I'm
new
working on
bus into the system, how do you go by giving the drivers, training on it? Before they put it
Well,
on the road?
we put everybody through, I guess there's 3 hours of training on the new buses, all the different systems. They go through training on fare boxes when they get hired and any, you know, they'll get refresher courses. There's there's destination sign training, there's now, we have, this is going further into my report, but we tried to implement bus stop enunciation on Monday and fell flat on our face because of system issues, but there's training involved with those tablets and how to operate them. And so anytime somebody comes in and changes their route, they come in as a 3 and are going out as a Route 7, they have to change your destination sign, you have to change your fare box, and now these new tablets for the bus stop enunciation. So there's a lot of training that you know, that we continually train on.
Are our drivers up to this,
So-
you know?
I think so.
Well, is there a way of, with the, what you say, some of the buses, accident caused because they didn't lift it back up over. That you put a check mark up there on the dash somewhere,
Like a
main
checklist or
things that
something.
the driver has to do.
Yeah, well, we try to address those, you know, in our quarterly State of the Coast meetings. You know, we'll go through refreshers and things like that. And, you know, I don't think that, you know, we're talking about 49 breakdowns and over 60,000 hours of service. So that's not a lot in the overall scheme of things. And there are, you know, there's a number of breakdowns that aren't getting counted because we're not missing enough service. And then if we get that bus back up and running in 15 minutes, we don't count it as a
Maybe you're
breakdown.
right about the checklist, because the pilot is sitting there while you're getting on, he's got a checklist he's
Yeah.
gone all through to make sure that everything's
Yeah.
right. Maybe that's a good idea.
Yeah, that they can just check off, make sure that, you know, those things that they didn't lift the bus back up.
Right.
You know, these are the things that I gotta do before I take off. It's gonna take a second to look at it.
Right,
Well,
you
you
gotta
know,
remember that stuff.
Yeah.
But you know, the accident rate, the miles that went up by 2%, and the accident rate went up by 41%. So I think, I don't know if we're talking about the right thing. I do think the breakdowns is important, but I'm much more concerned about the accident rate.
Yeah,
That's a huge increase in, you know.
How much do they add fault, accident rate go up?
Well,
Yeah, I don't know that I have those stats. I mean, it's 7 accidents over the course of a year. So you're dividing 7 by 17? Yeah, that number doesn't jump off the page at me.
7 more accidents over the course of the year.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, we had a really bad month. You know, July, we had 8 accidents.
yeah,
And, you know, that's in the dead of summer.
yeah, yeah.
And,
July
and a lot of them were
downtown
fender
traffic.
benders, and they were just stupid stuff. So I don't put a lot of, I'm not
Okay,
concerned too much about it. Now, we've been doing our defensive driving, you know, and, you know, we've solidified our orientation. Like, we've written it down in terms of, you know, getting new drivers trained on multiple routes and multiple vehicles and going through some of the key defensive driving components. We've put our foot down on distracted driving. In fact, we've let 2 drivers go in the past 2 months for distracted driving.
but unfortunately, what we can't control is the distracted driving of the cars.
No.
Because that, I have to believe that is gone up, jacked up,
Have you driven
despite
down
HTC's good.
Have you driven
efforts.
down
It's
17
crazy.
in the summer? You can go from one part of North Myrtle Beach to the other and see 4 accidents
Yeah,
where people were either looking for a restaurant and they're going through here and they get hit by 3 cars,
Yeah.
you
yeah,
know, and it's just, and it's all night long too.
you're right. And I don't mean to be numerically fussy. Maybe a thing to do is to, in this report, if there is a way to separate accidents at fault and accidents at no fault.
Okay.
So that we can just begin to kind of talk about, you know, what we can control and what others cannot.
But I think we only had one that was at the fault, wasn't it? And all that?
Well, no, I mean, there's
What, the one that
25%.
came out,
So I
the
would
one
say
that
8 of
came
those
out?
24 were what we call preventable. Or the driver contributed to the accident.
Oh, okay.
Those big
And that's just
buses-
me off the top of my head. I'm not sure, you know.
In some ways, those big buses and how colorful they are, I don't know.
Do you
I
think
get
maybe they're looking at the bus and not looking at what
I
they're
get
doing?
intimidated when the damn thing goes by me, and I don't get intimidated when the school bus goes by, and I don't know what it is. You know, I get intimidated, it's like one of the big tour buses that goes by, I just
Yeah,
find
there's
it,
a lot of tour buses out there.
There are.
A lot more colorful than ours. that are
I
running
just
around.
find it huge, and trying to negotiate one of those things down through downtown Myrtle Beach would be
Yeah,
like trying to
yeah.
get a submarine to somehow go down on, you know, Beach Road there, whatever the, it just, or a tank, try to drive a tank through here, not hit something.
With this new report, is there any reason why you switched FY16 first and then FY17 to the right of it? Because our financial reports are usually
Always
the
have.
opposite.
You know, Joe, it's interesting that you brought
The
that up.
accountant didn't use
Because I physically had it the other way, and then I moved it just because of the way I read left to right instead of right to left. More than any other reason.
Joe
But
is back.
He always comes up with some real singers.
So Brian, if you have any problems with drivers changing fare boxes and changing signs inbound, outbound, I see that.
Rod had something.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't here, I would've fixed it.
The CSR people here and there, they know what bus is coming in and what's
I didn't
changing.
notice that.
Right.
So they can be aware of that, you know. At
Well,
3 o'clock,
yeah, it's
buses
not
are
good
changing,
system.
let me go out
Right.
and just remind this driver or make sure it's done.
And, you know, that's something that, you're right, we need to get them out there and actually supervising those changes and making sure that they happen.
Got anything more in your?
Yes,
your report?
I have several things.
Go for it. We'll start bugging you.
So,
Yeah.
you wanna pass those out? I only have one of the project ones. So, we had a State of the Coast meeting, when was it? 2 weeks ago, maybe? It was,
Last Tuesday.
so it was last Tuesday. And those are employee meetings that we have on a quarterly basis where, and several of you have been to some of them, where we talk, you know, about service issues. We did crack down on distracted driving. We're using bus video to randomly check, make sure people aren't talking on their cell phones while driving, you know, not fiddling with something else while they're driving, and just to let them know that we're watching them. Because we have had some accidents that involved distracted driving, and we've actually let some people go as a result of it because they've had multiple infractions of that issue. But the other thing about the other thing that we did at the State of the Coast is I distributed a survey, which is a blank copy of it is being distributed. And it was sort of an epiphany that I had the day before as a result of some stuff that I saw at the APTA meeting that I attended. And related, there was a really good session for GMs and executives on changing the culture within your organization. That's something that I think we're at the point now where we need to start considering some of those changes. So this was my first foray into it, and I specifically didn't ask for what department they were in. I did ask them how long they've been working here, so I wanted to get kind of an understanding of how people are feeling based on how long they've been working here. And then there were some really pointed questions in here. And I would like to bring some of this information to you all, but I might want to do it as part of an executive session because this is personnel related.
That's kind of a stretch of the definition of executive session. The definition, as it relates to personnel, is individual people. I don't
So you
think
don't think I should do that?
I don't think that's a real good
Well, that,
idea.
I know it's reason for bringing it up.
Correct me if someone
because,
else is more.
I mean, maybe we do it at Service PAC committee
Might find
and
it.
talk about some of the results of this survey.
Yeah, I'd like to see the results. I'm hoping they're good, but. yeah.
They are mixed. You know, I added some questions in here to just kind of get an understanding of where drivers saw themselves, but the whole management treats all employees fairly question. I got some sixes there, which was interesting. I probably got 8 or 9 sixes in there, so I wanna follow up on that. I think for the most part, people felt that safety and security were taken seriously at Coast RTA. Didn't really see a whole lot of bad scores there. There was a lot of 6s on the Ride Tracker app. So we need to look at
on the Ride Tracker?
a lot of not favorables on the Ride Tracker app.
I wonder why.
Well, I wanna get to the bottom of that, so I don't know why. I don't know if it was people who have to support it and answer questions about it, or if it was drivers thinking that,
Everybody
you
talks about
know, I don't know.
it. Yeah.
So
But did
more
you
to
get
come
that-
on this.
Can you get that to Dr. Twig? I know he didn't
I
sign.
think, you know, for my part, this is gonna establish sort of a baseline, and we, you know, as we move forward. We have conflict management training slated for right after the first of the year, for all staff. And I'm hoping that the person who's gonna be conducting that training can kind of mine some of the issues that are coming out of it via that training. Especially management treats all employees fairly. I didn't get nearly as many 1s and 2s on compare your working conditions now to last year, as I was hoping for. So, you know, we'll see how that goes.
Brian, just a technical thing.
Yeah.
Say highly favorable, not favorable. It's kind of dumb. I don't mean it that way, but it's, someone said, strongly agree to strongly disagree, then I know what the item is asking. But I don't know, when it says highly favorable, I don't know compared to what. So you might, I guess I'm just saying, you might have an interpretation issue that as you go and do this again.
Yes.
You don't want your chair to call you
See, I
dumb.
thought you'd be proud of me that I did.
I am- I am-
1 through 6,
I'm proud of you,
because
but Nick came in, and I owe it to Nick
Nick.
to at least ask, am I right in suggesting alternative language up there? That,
Did you see it?
so it's just, if you get some
this
stuff
is
you
what I
don't
get for
understand,
having a statistics professor. as
if
well.
you get some stuff you don't understand, it might be because
Yeah.
of the.
Well, I'm sure there's some of that
Yeah.
in there, for sure.
I'm just glad there's not 5 and encourage everybody to go down the middle. 6
Thank you. That's
Makes it go
exactly
one
what I
way
was
or-
hoping to get some kudos for.
Yeah.
I went with 1 through 6, so you can't split it down the middle.
That's right.
And there was actually very few
Help
what
me
we
out,
call
Nick.
pencil whipped ones, where somebody just circled the same number all the way down.
What kind of response, how many total number of
I got
responses?
52 responses.
Good.
So, you know, I definitely want to use this as, you know, improving our culture.
What's our total, close to 6, how many employees we got?
We have 72,
72.
I think. And there were a few folks who didn't sign in, so I'll get to them and give them an opportunity to fill out a survey. So more on that later. I also distributed a project listing. There are some changes. I deleted some lines that are completely completed and not really, you know, like our bus purchase and things like that. Highlighted ones have changed a little bit. I just want to hit a couple of highlights. Still working on 2 FMO findings. The triennial findings related to FMO are resolved, so really the only thing that's still out there on triennial is ADA stuff. And there's a lot to be done on that. So I'll have a better report for you all on where we stand on that in December. We finally got the contract from COG for 2 additional cutaways. We'll be ordering those this week for delivery sometime in January. Those are funded under the regional 5310 program, with the local match coming from the county capital money.
Short?
Sure,
Weight or what?
small. We are moving forward with an RFP for longer cutaways. I won't say our favorite, because we still have to go out for an RFP, but one of the Ford chassis that we wanted to be at least proposed on this RFP is now going through tuna testing, which is the federal requirement for transit buses, where they put the vehicle through a number of tests. That's happened, so then we're gonna go ahead and go out for bid for 24 footers, which is a little bit longer.
Are these the ones you were gonna try to open up for wheelchairs? You had mentioned that you were gonna try to reconfigure a couple of new buses so that wheelchairs could get on them, but it might involve taking out a couple seats.
That's the minivans that we talked
The
about.
minivan, okay,
Those are
I'm sorry,
minivans.
thanks, okay.
Smaller vehicles.
Yeah.
These are really for fixed route service. They'd be replacing 2 longer cutaways out there to our box, and also replacing 0018, which is the last white full-size bus we have out there.
Route 1, what other routes would you most likely use those on? Route 1 and what else?
Well, Route 10 in the off-season, 1, 2, 3 could all be used on those. They're really good off-season buses, and good for, special events.
It's not good for 16.
16, not so much, no, nor 7.
How about the Myrtle Beach Transfer Center? That's not even on here now.
Yeah, it is number 11.
Number 11.
Ivory Wilson.
That's the Ivory Wilson Transit Center. I'm talking about like a new terminal for,
Oh,
intermodal center.
yeah,
You were calling it before.
that's in planning, you're right, I need to put that on here. We, talked about that briefly, I think, at Finance Committee. There's 800,000 sitting at the, at FTA in 5307 money that was transferred over from Federal Highway, that we need to at least have in a grant by the end of this fiscal year, by September 30th of next year. And so that is another topic for discussion to talk to the COG. I want to make sure that they understand that I'm going to put, all of our due diligence into a project to spend those dollars. That will include restarting the feasibility study, doing a phase 2 environmental analysis of this facility, which is questions we don't want to know the answers to. Possibly getting into some of the environmental for the 2, 1 or 2 facilities that we're talking about closer to Myrtle Beach. Passenger facility as well as another maintenance facility. I want to do some analysis on the possibility of a temporary facility if that need comes up. And then there is a environmental justice analysis that has to be done with any new passenger handling facility related to the benefits and burdens to environmental justice populations, low income, minority, those types of things. It's a requirement in order to spend money on a facility.
Well, a month or 2 ago, Darrell was saying that he, having gone to the board member after things, getting these emails about all these FTA things. And I get those emails too. Most of them I don't know what they're talking about and such. But is there anything that we can do for this intermodal center now that if one of those things become available or in a better shape?
We need to have that feasibility study done so that we have information to put into those grant applications on what we're going to build. We have to be I guess a better way of answering this, we have to be much closer to being shovel-ready before they would entertain funding us under those programs. Talking about bus and bus facilities and the number of Tiger Grant, any of those things.
So what's the next thing we need to do?
Feasibility study needs to get restarted.
And what's the next thing we need to do to restart that?
Get this grant up and running. So the issue with the grant is the match. And if there's 800,000 in FTA money, we need 200,000 in local money or non-federal money to match those dollars.
So we can't
It's
do anything
80-20.
until we get that, right?
Or we can use those toll credits I was talking to you about in the past, so I've got to pursue that with the state.
How about if we,
There's lots
went to the county and city and asked for a piece of property? Would that be?
I think we've done that, haven't we?
Well, that would be local match for building it, not really for the planning side of it. So there's all sorts of things that needs to happen. It needs to be designed. It needs an environmental clearance for any new facility. There's lots of stuff that we can use this money for.
But
We'll need more than 800,000 to get through that whole
If
process.
we had that piece of ground, we could use that as collateral, couldn't we?
But not for the study. That's what you're
No,
saying.
not
We
for
use
the
it for-
study, right.
We use it for the building.
Toll credits, so you said there's almost
20 million. The problem with the toll credits is that this becomes an $800,000 project instead of a $1 million project. Because toll credits aren't actual dollars, they're just allowing us to use the federal dollars because we're using these toll credits as the match, but they're credits, they're not actual coins.
Okay. Tell me, explain again the ramification. I heard what you said, but I don't.
Well, if you're matching it under traditional terms, you gotta put 200,000 up for the 800,000, that's $1 million. So your project cost could be $1 million.
Okay.
But if you use toll credits, then you just have the federal money to use. So there is no 200 in
Just
local
the
match.
800,000.
Gotcha.
So it just becomes an $800,000 project.
Gotcha.
And, you know, either works. I mean, we're gonna spend more than 800,000 getting this thing developed
Really. Good plan.
easily. I mean, we could doing a environmental analysis of 2 facilities potentially, because we're talking about 2 different locations. And it might be done in one process.
But they'll give us all the AVX land for free since it's contaminated.
Do we have a time frame on when this study's gonna be done, if ever?
Not yet.
No.
What about
I'm not
a
gonna set
discussion
those
on our
expectations, I've learned.
future property,
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
future property for maintenance?
That is
facilities?
something that with the results of a feasibility study, we can make inroads to try to locate that. You know, I think given the vision plan that you all put together at the retreat, however long ago that was, you probably need to go through the math to really optimize what our location should be one more time. Because, you know, before it was, you know, right there at Joe White and 17, you know, that was sort of the epicenter of our service. That may have changed a little bit based on those routes and how much service we would put on those. So, and then, you know, we're looking at trying to find a location as close to that spot as possible. And the real estate may push us around a little bit.
So I have a question and maybe followed by a request. If tomorrow an emergency happened that we had to evacuate this building, where would you go? What would you do with the buses while still providing service?
I would, I don't know the answer to that question, but I would start calling, I would call school system first, I would call CCU second, I would call county third.
Okay, then I guess my question is appropriate. I wouldn't wait to make that call. I would, in the interest of what, you know, could happen, I would contact the director of transportation at Coastal. I would put that maybe first, because I know they've got, they're basically parking their buses over in a pole barn structure with a lot outside on the other side of 501 in what we used to call the Atlantic Park,
By the tennis courts there.
over by where the tennis courts are. You could put 20 more buses in there, and it wouldn't make any difference. Now, I don't know how they're doing the maintenance, but I have to believe that the pole barn structure there has even excess room there. So if you at least had a phone call made, you know, start with the president or start with the VP. They've got a new VP for finance. Stacy has left. There's a new person in there.
But I'd
But
probably talk to Gary Wisner, the guy who runs the service over
to
there.
who now?
The GM over there.
That would be fine.
And I need to talk to him about joining task anyway, so I've got other things to talk to him.
I talked to him,
And then
at least,
run it up.
yeah, at least, and he would be fine. He was former police chief.
Yeah.
Interesting.
What situation would cause us to evacuate from here?
Pardon me?
There's a fire in the place.
What situation would cause us to evacuate?
Well, I have a feeling just having, it actually, if you want to see this place emptied out, today's the day to do it. There were no buses in there. But
I was chastising Tom for that, but.
I suspect there's environmental dread in there somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know if it is terrible mold or if it is oil-based toxins, but I suspect that if somebody went in there, thank goodness we don't have an EPA to worry about anymore because of the current administration. But I think there is a risk of discovering something really terrible environmentally in there. And I would just feel better, as we talk about this $20 million plan, or 800,000, or $1 million, and, you know, the planning process and all that, I would just feel better if you had a plan B, that you'd already kind of negotiated a potential, you know, 3-month, 6-month solution for in transition. I wouldn't, I'm not a mechanic, but I can tell you, I've been in a lot of mechanic places that are cleaner than that, and that are, that feel, that
Probably
feel.
not good for the employees either.
Well, I've been in a lot of mechanic places now. I admit, haven't been in an airplane hangar, you know, or in a military base where, you know, you've got so many vehicles coming and going, and probably they are closer to this. I'm talking the commercial, but could you just get
Well,
that?
that's really part of business continuity, which
Yeah,
is something
it
that
is.
we.
Yeah, and if you could get some movement on that and say, you know, I did talk to, you know, X and Y, and they have agreed that in the event of a tremendous catastrophe, you know, they could help us out for a period of time, and I think this board would feel reassured. I'm not saying you need a written agreement, because that might get you further down the road of bureaucracy than you want, but one of those three, the one I think is probably the most available is coastal.
Maybe even a reciprocal agreement, although we have limited everything, but we might be able to help someone
Well,
else in the same situation.
Right.
You know, a long time ago, there, the city of Myrtle Beach was talking about offering us a piece of ground on 10th Avenue near the storage plant, which they can never give away. They've always tried to give it away to so many people, they wouldn't take it. But there is a piece of ground there.
Yeah, right behind the public works.
Yes.
That's still
But
on
the
the table.
odor is at times really bad.
Yeah.
What about the information that has already been developed in the process of,
You mean from the previous study?
yeah,
It's still usable, but we've sort of lost the statute of limitations on bringing that company back in here, where hopefully they will bid on the new.
But you're not
I
going to be
mean,
able to use that.
yeah, we use the information
Well,
that
and I
they,
think there's some information there on programming the facility, you know, what the facility needs to include, the facilities need to include, is still usable. It might need a little bit of an update, depending, you know, on what our vision is, you know, moving forward. But, you know, we're gonna wanna build something that is modular, so that we can, and has a lot of room for expansion, you know, over time. You know, especially if we were ever to get, you know, a tourism-based dedicated funding where we're, you know, putting some buses, you know, some serious buses out there.
So would you commit to making those contacts so they can go on Bernie's list?
Yep. Yes, sir.
You're doomed.
Thanks.
So a couple of other quick items. We are in the midst of public meetings for making a change on the 15 North from its current routing, which goes over from Kings Highway outbound over to Ocean Boulevard, goes up the whole length of Ocean Boulevard to 77th or 79th and cuts over to the hospital, converting that over to Kings Highway the whole way up.
Which has been there for 2 months now.
Which has been like that under temporary conditions for a couple months. And we had 2 meetings yesterday, one at 8, where we only had 1 participant, and last night at 6, where we had 3 participants. We have gotten a few comments via the app and other avenues for getting in. And so far, I've only heard 1 person say they'd like it to stay. We've gotten a few others that said that the change is good, and there's more destinations along Kings Highway and
Nobody called it a
So-
dumb idea.
no, well, but you know, the one issue that, you think it's a dumb idea? Have you submitted a comment as such?
No, because I get why it is, it's just inconvenient for me.
It's inconvenient for you.
Personally inconvenient for me.
Well, the
You can't
only
get
other
the
fallback
you can't get the
position
KW?
would be
I
going.
have to cross the highway, that's all.
Oh, that big highway's terrible.
The only other option would be to, on the outbound, is to cut over on 52nd over to Ocean Boulevard, serve the resorts, but then come back on Kings Highway, because there's no light at 52nd to get back on to Kings Highway, which I,
Treacherous getting out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm with you, Brian, my comment is I'm with you. Because I get the problem.
you're with Doug, because this is Doug's
When
change.
he gets hit,
I get the problem.
when he gets hit, we're gonna hear it.
Well, I cross the highway other times, it just is one more
Well,
time.
that, you're crazy, that highway's terrible.
Yeah, it is crazy.
So we'll keep the lines open here for a little bit longer to see, we have another meeting scheduled for tomorrow at noon. So we try to pick time slots, they're all at the Chapin Library, which is en route. We've been waiting to start the proceedings, until after that last bus kinda goes by, just in case anybody's trying to get to it.
Are we getting
And then-
Facebook as well? Are we open on Facebook for
I
comments?
might go in there tomorrow.
You can't make comments on Facebook.
Playing.
We put the information so that they get to go through our comments on the website, so you
Yeah.
can click the link.
I don't even know what I'm talking about. when
And
I talk
after
about
tomorrow's meeting, we're all gonna go get on the 16 X's, just to make sure those folks know this is happening and, cause there is some exchange between those routes and Route 10.
And where have we
Roughly
advertised
north.
these meetings? I saw it on the app, that's the only place I saw it.
It was on the buses,
It's on
all
Facebook.
routes,
On the buses.
at the transit centers,
Press release went out.
press release, on our website, on social media.
Yeah,
So,
because that's actually how the three last night.
We had some
so-
pretty interesting folks there last night. It was a Hispanic family that lives down there in the Pine Island area, and they have a special needs son who rides the 10 and then transfers to the 15 north and a couple times a week, I guess,
By himself?
by himself. He likes the change, so he wanted to make a comment that he thought the change was good. But they were really wanting to talk more about getting more service on 544, which is where they own property and want to move to.
That's where they lived before, but they moved
Yeah, they moved
into Myrtle Beach to
Yeah, to get to access transit. So it's pretty interesting folks, and we're gonna keep contact with them, about, over time to see how they're doing.
Is it a young man, guy?
Yeah, his name's Juan,
Well,
tall, nice fellow.
He might be the guy that he told me his name was John. so maybe-
Okay,
That's the
yeah,
same.
he Americanized it for you.
Yeah.
I have, one other thing, task board met in October, it's still October, right? My calendar's broken,
Yeah.
August for obvious
Two more
reasons.
days.
And then really the only thing to report out of that is that the association along with DOT has a meeting with the Department of Insurance regarding Volkswagen's settlement with the state, which is about $44 million. And we're obviously gonna try to get some of that money for transit, so it's all air quality based projects, which transit inherently qualifies for. So, I'll have more on that as details come available.
It's funny to think of these tiny little Volkswagens with their problem feeding eventually our
Yeah.
mass transit system.
But their cars are getting really nice looking.
Oh, yeah, I agree,
Really nice
yeah.
looking, convertibles and all
Yeah,
that.
I drove one when I was in Ireland. It was
Yeah.
wonderful.
And while I'm disappointed in their cheating scandal, but I've always been a Volkswagen owner, so we're gonna
Well, did you
make
run
sure
in-
they understand that when we're in the meeting, so.
Did you run into anything at APTA about
Bless you, bless you.
getting transit and Uber together, as a combination?
No, there wasn't anything on that. The nice thing about this meeting was there was an expo, which is every 3 years they do an expo, and it's basically 7 or 8 football fields of transit stuff, which is kind of fun for
Come
somebody
home
in
with
my,
boxes of stuff.
all sorts of stuff. And,
Christmas time in July.
and so I made a point of looking at paratransit scheduling software. I made a point of looking at cutaway vehicles, both smaller and longer ones. Did have some discussions with New Flyer. Got to go to their event at the World of Coke, that was fun. And then in the meetings, I didn't see a whole lot on business continuity, which is one of my goals there, but they did go to the session about, that was directed at executives on, just molding the culture in your organization. And I think that having been here now for as long as I have been, it's time to start really looking at that stuff and you know, it's things that strike me in our organization is I don't really feel the, I'm trying to think of a good word. There's not much attachment to technology in this group. And so we need to work on that, you know, because I think technology is the answer to a lot of issues that we have in making the system easier to use and that type of thing. We're still very data poor. We've got to make some inroads on that. I feel like, you know, I'm you know, like I could show you the file of the 40 or 45 standard reports that come out of Gen Fair that I'm trying to go through to kind of set up this fare box analysis thing that we need to do. I did get a little bit of information. It's about a 10% transfer rate. So in August, we had 70,000 rides and about 7,000 transfers used. I would have thought it would have been a lot higher than that. So I need to kind of assess how many people are using passes, you know, and those types of things. But that was a lot lower number than I had anticipated. So, and you know, it's just 1 month of data. So we're trying to go through lots of months of data, and we have 2 years of basically the same service out there. So we've got a lot of information that we can you know, look at. It's just a matter of mining it and extracting it out of our sources. So, you know, those are things that we need to work on.
You go to the ice cream suite?
The ice cream suite?
Oh, yes,
At the APTA?
yes.
I'm trying to cut down on my carbs.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
That is
do a
the
whole lot
best,
of,
that is the best.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Everybody goes there,
We never miss that.
You gave an answer to Daryl's question last week that maybe the others need to hear, because we all read, well, I don't read the newspaper anymore, but I read the online version, which has just become a piece of bird nest blockages. But we've all, I think, heard the story about the school district needing to be more competitive in hiring drivers. And how far away are we in salary?
We're above, but if we had to increase ours for $1 an hour to stay ahead of the school district, it costs us $72,000 a year. Right now, we're better, we pay better than the school district, but they have 29 vacancies.
Yes.
And I predict they're going to raise their rate, then we'll be behind the power curve and to stay with
Well, have
parity.
they announced the intention to raise the rate?
They have not, but that'd be the next logical thing they're going to have to
The
do.
only other thing that we have, you know, granted, they have 370 some odd, actually that's vehicles, I think it might be like 500
So the question is, what
drivers.
is our plan to respond to that?
So percentage-wise, we have more full-time
Right.
work, but
Right.
it's only, you know, what do we have, 45 drivers roughly? So that's aside from pay rate, that's the only advantage I have. I think benefits are very similar. They're on pension, we're on pension.
But we're 12 month, they're 9 month.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
but they can be paid on the 12 months.
Yeah, they can
like
spread out.
teachers
they can spread it out,
if they want.
but the salary they're talking about is a 9 month,
Right.
or it's an hourly
Right.
salary.
Right.
So their net take home is, you know, much less than ours.
Because they're working more here.
Yeah, Michelle, you were quoted in the paper on it. They're about 75 cents an hour less than us, and we give a pay raise after 90 days. which they
And that was
don't.
part-time, it's 460.
Yeah. I just see the day's gonna come, we may have to do something to stay, right now we're in a better position.
But part of your answer too is you said you thought there was a different culture, a bus driver for the school bus, a school bus driver versus.
Yeah, I mean, you have to like split shifts and,
You gotta like kids,
and you have to like kids.
scream and holler
And,
around.
and there has been an influx of drivers coming our way because of the kid issue. But
You didn't like my
I
own
think
kids.
along with the school system, I think just labor in general is something that we have to be concerned about.
Yeah.
Because I have drivers who are reaching retirement age, and so,
Are we
What
competitive
is
with the
retirement
mechanics?
age here?
well, you
Or
know,
do we have-
I probably said that poorly. They are getting to the point where they're gonna be willing to retire.
But do we
But we
have a
don't really have
cutoff?
an age.
Well, I thought when you drove, you should have some type of trouble.
As long as you can pass the DOT.
When I was younger, I did, now I don't.
Well, now that my husband is 90, he doesn't think we should have anything.
Yeah, we can't touch that with a 10-foot pole, so it is up
Oh,
to
you
whether or not you
can't,
can
you
pass the
can't. Oh,
DOT
okay.
physical.
Did the Miller Mott people, did they ever come up with the CDL?
Yes, yes.
They do have a
You're
senior
always like 2.5 steps ahead of me.
Yeah.
Yes, they are willing to do it, so we are gonna work with them on trying to put that together.
It's on his list.
We're gonna replace 0018, which is that last Gillick bus out there, and put it in contingency fleet and use it for training. So I will lease that to them for a nominal fee, so that they can use it for training, as long as we get the insurance stuff and all that worked out. And so, yeah, we will start using them to provide CDL training and do some sort of tenure agreement with the employees that come through that program to us with the CDL.
It's just a mile or two from my house, maybe I need to get a CDL.
Maybe I need one.
Over by Lowe's,
Just
yeah.
bring on your kids.
Oh, yeah, you need one, right?
You
Yeah.
know, back to
You
Bert
can
Paul
drive
and
it with your
Bernie's
cane.
Baptist question, any insight from the, I'm sure you got some feds there talking.
Yeah, FTA was decidedly hard to get a hold of because they were with the big boys.
Okay.
I didn't really rate.
No insight on how much money might be coming?
I think that's all really in a state of flux. They're not sure what the existing administration is gonna do.
Well, they don't know if they have a budget.
But, I mean, I think most people will tell you that is it FAST Act or whatever the last reauthorization is safe. So I think we have 3 more years of that. And there's like 5% bumps every year in that. But then nobody can tell you what happens after FAST Act.
But no, okay, I was hoping they were gonna throw even more money in the short term
Yeah.
before the 2020 election.
Well, they did put out a couple of, like the bus and bus facilities, call for projects. There was certainly before he took office, Trump, had some infrastructure type things, but they haven't really materialized on the transit.
Even if they
side
did
of
though,
things.
it's like they're gonna be shovel ready, which we need to have our study done
And that
so
is-
before we get to the
that's
next
a big
step.
drawback for us.
Okay. All right.
Now in the bus and bus facility ones, we did go after 4 new platters.
Okay.
So we should hear on that December timeframe. And those will replace DART buses.
Is the federal transportation department doing anything?
It depends
Do
on
they
what
have-
you define, how you define that, but yeah, they're out there and,
Who's our leader up there?
Secretary
yeah, Choi or,
Oh,
Yeah,
her, oh,
Jay.
yeah, oh, yeah,
Mitch McConnell.
she was at,
Yeah, that's right.
she did the keynote and she
Yeah.
didn't say much.
Well, they always have someone they say.
But,
that did the keynote, yeah.
And I did have to leave early to do an ATAX presentation.
Well, maybe
I
our
kinda
husband
wish I
didn't-
didn't leave at
Maybe our
this
husband
point,
didn't
but-
tell her what to say.
I like her better.
So that's it for the general
Okay.
manager's report.
It's a nice lengthy general manager's report.
A lot going on.
Yeah.
We have no resolutions to approve. Moving on to old business, we have a FY18 meeting scheduled in our packet.
Yes, it's the last small sheet in your packet, and if you want to take it with you, please feel free. That's one reason why I put it in there.
Where you
I
will
sent it
take it
out.
home and promptly lose it.
I sent it out via email,
Or the 18.
Oh, yeah,
You just
oh,
get
yeah.
same,
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
same
Oh, yeah,
one,
yeah.
and
right.
I also,
Looks
on the
like this.
computer, I went through and added it and sent invites to everybody, so if you accept, it should go on your calendar.
what is that?
The meetings,
The invite.
I took it and went through the whole year and put all of them on the calendars and sent out invites to the board. So if you
When did
accepted
send that
them,
out?
3 or 4 days ago.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
It's been a
I got
while.
a bunch of them.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So-
But this is the same thing you had before.
Yes, sir, this is the final one.
No
Yeah.
changes?
So yeah, you could check your calendar.
The only thing really that we changed was adding the day as well as the
That was on
date.
the last one, too.
Yeah,
So,
right.
yeah.
The next
This
meeting is
came-
at Conway,
Yes,
County House,
because
county.
the conference room here will be
right.
hopefully up to the ceiling with coats for kids. So we'll be meeting in room A on the second floor. of the county complex.
It's where the transportation committee.
Oh,
You didn't answer my question.
I'm
Does
sorry.
that mean we have to be, act like grown-ups?
No,
I sent you the note, an
just
email.
act normal.
I don't think that's Route
Well,
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
no,
right.
that's not room A, that's not multiple.
Route A is on the other side of the main,
So that's room B.
we go left,
Transportation
Right.
committee.
we go
Is
left
there
instead of
any
right.
that's the county
You're
conference.
gonna go around,
Council conference.
We go up the top of the steps, we go
Mhm.
left
Other
instead of
side of the
transportation.
court,
yeah, I think so.
the chamber, are two,
Conference room.
yeah,
It's near the chamber, it's near
That's
county
December
council
6th.
chambers.
yeah, it's on the other side of
All
the.
right, so you get to the top of the stairs, you gotta go left instead
Instead
of
of
right.
right.
Correct.
So we probably
Well,
won't
that's
Get out of the
Well, that's
elevator.
Got it
Get
here
out of the
today,
elevator,
so.
left, right?
Yes.
Do we have any new business? Do we go, have any need for executive session?
Quick one.
Okay, personnel?
Legal matter.
A legal matter? So if we note the reason, all those in favor of going into executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Well, all right, we are back in session. We have had no vote, no action of any type. May I have a motion
Move we come out of
I second.
session.
to come out of the cone of silence and second? I don't think we need a second. I think that one, I think we're good. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. Do we
No
have
votes
any,
were taken and no decisions were made.
pardon me?
No decisions were made nor votes taken.
Yeah, that's correct. I thought I said that, but I've been thinking too much and speaking.
I always put that in anyway, so.
Okay. Yeah, maybe that update should happen after the meeting, that question that you had.
It doesn't matter to me, I mean, I don't think it matters to, I'll just make the announcement
Okay?
that Ron is sticking around for a little bit longer. He'll be working remotely for the most part, but coming here on a regular basis. And the main reason is to get us through audit, since he was, front and center on that. And, we're gonna take those few months to kind of see if it'll work for him and for me in terms of that type of arrangement.
It's a long drive from Toledo. I've done it.
Yeah, so we've already worked, we've already gotten him a laptop and we're working through the VPN, the remote access for Sage, which, had a few hoops to jump through for that. Yeah, I think we'll try it and, he's willing and we'll just see how it works out, keep you posted.
You need a place to stay? I got a couple extra bedrooms.
I'll let him know.
Let him know.
He's planning to stay in a time order next time.
Yeah, through the end of October.
Oh.
And then he's here for the first week of November. We'll have him and Mike Levitan here. Lots to do related to prep for the audit, but also doing the truing up for our indirect cost rate. I'm gonna get Mike started on NTD reporting. There's just a litany of things that we'll have Mike help on. So we also have to do that analysis where we're gonna reintegrate the percentage of my expenses into the labor, into the overhead rate. So we all wanna be here in one place and knock all that stuff out.
And we didn't ask if you have an update on the time card. The RFP went out.
Thank you for, I did have an update on that. We only got one bid. And I guess it was open publicly, so it was ADP that bid on it. They had a number of requested changes in our federal clauses in it, that they made the changes and signed them. So we don't really consider it to be a responsive bid.
They expect us
So
to change.
we've gone back out, we've talked to all the folks that we offered this to and asked them why they didn't propose. Gotten, made a few changes as a result of those questions, so we're reopening it. I think bids are due November 15th, and so we're gonna try one more time and see if we can get that, get those folks on board. So, ADP's already told us they're gonna rebid, so.
Who took the information out?
Hmm?
Who took the information out of the first bid?
Who took the
You
information?
say it was some information taken out of
They
the,
took our standard forms, our certifications and assurances
Yeah.
and federal clauses, and edited them to make them more amenable to themselves.
They can't do that.
The proposer, the
They can't do that.
group that proposed.
okay.
So we're told them you can't do that. And I even gave them a website at FTA and saying, this is the history, you can go learn the history of these. Every you know, we have to adhere to these things, so we have to push down those requirements to our vendors.
Mm.
And so we can't edit that. One of them was like, the guy who signed it wasn't an officer of the company. So he didn't want, you know, he took all this language out there that he can sign contracts and it's like, no, give me somebody who can sign for you guys. It was mundane stuff.
Yeah, it seems really like a.
For ADB or the
Right.
big company.
And there was one company that said that they missed the deadline, so we think we're gonna get, you know, there was an issue with having just one bid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we're hoping to get multiple bids.
Okay, any other questions?
So if we get one bid this time around, we'll try to sole source it.
Get to bang the gavel, and I apologize for saying that was a dumb question.
Can't take it back.
I rewrote it. Well,
Yeah.
can you rewrite the minutes?
That won't go in the minutes.
Thanks, everybody.
All those in favor of
I get all
adjourning?
the details, I put all details like that.
Opposed to adjourning? We're out of here.